Okay. Let me make sure everything is good. All right, so I think we are live. Hello. Okay, hello everyone. So this is really exciting. We get to talk about this new moon solar eclipse that's coming up. So it is tomorrow. It is actually a partial eclipse. So we won't be able to see it here, unfortunately, in North America, but if you live below the equator in certain places, you might be able to see it. So yes, let's just kind of jump into it. I pulled a lot of cards because I just felt it was really hard for me to try to describe the energy right now, and I thought we could use maybe a little bit of guidance. Things are weird. They're always weird around the eclipses. Reality bends, like literally bends in half, and we enter into this wormhole and start on one side and end up on the other during the actual eclipse. So a lot of potent energy. What I've been noticing, just as like a overall summary, is like, because the veil is so thin, because there's so much motion, like things are really in motion right now, but they're in motion in a way that they aren't usually. So we're kind of like moving forward through space, but things are also kind of like waving in and out, like different parallel dimensions and different realities. And I feel like there's all kinds of things getting through these different realities into our reality, and it's kind of like all messed up. I mean, I've just been seeing so many things, it's hard to tell like what's real, what's not real, what is that just came into reality, like seriously, what is that? So let's talk about all of that stuff, and we'll talk about the constellations that we have alignments with, and yeah, so let's get started. So yeah, let me know how you guys are feeling. All right. So we will start here. So the new moon solar eclipse in Taurus. So it's an eclipse because the moon and the sun are very, very close to the north node. So whenever you have the moon and the sun near the lunar nodes, the north node and the south node, that's when we end up having an eclipse, because the moon does not rotate around the earth like a normal circle. It kind of like wobbles backwards, and it also does not go like in a straight line. It kind of goes all over the place. Now what happens when we have an eclipse is everything lines up perfectly. So the moon, the sun, and the earth are all in a perfect line. Now, depending on how close the sun and the moon actually are to the lunar nodes, will show you how exact or partial the eclipse actually is. So if you actually look at the chart, the sun and the moon are like a little bit further away from the nodes, so that's why it ends up being a partial eclipse, because they're not in perfect alignment. They're in alignment, but they're not super close to where the moon is going to block out the sun entirely, if that makes sense. All right, so actually, let's get out of this for a second, because I don't want to get into the constellation stuff yet. But I do want to talk about just briefly what is Taurus, what is Capricorn, what is Virgo. So I was like kind of just writing some notes before we started here. Taurus is fixed Earth, okay? So Taurus being a fixed Earth sign, it's literally just like a rock is how I see it, like rock in the ground that does not move or cannot move. It's just stuck. Virgo is kind of like Earth that gets swept up by the wind. So like a dust storm or something like that. That's how I see Virgo, because Virgo is mutable Earth, meaning changeable, flexible Earth. Or maybe kind of like mud that can be molded, like clay. Which I'm pretty sure, never mind. Okay, so Capricorn is cardinal Earth. So cardinal being the active, masculine, forceful type of energy, Earth. So that's like an avalanche, or Capricorn is kind of like the unrelenting pressure that is needed to create a diamond. That's Capricorn. So it's very aggressive. It's stable. It's still Earth, but it can be chaotic for sure. I saw this video. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was last year. there was like a bunch of gigantic rocks somewhere, like falling down the mountain and just like destroying everything, like destroying bridges, like crushing people's cars. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people died when that happened too. That's like Capricorn kind of energy. That's Saturn, Earth energy. Saturn rules Capricorn. So Taurus is fixed Earth. Taurus is the bull. Taurus is stubborn. Taurus is fixated in whatever they are doing. So if Taurus is working, they can work all day. They can work all night. They can work, 19-hour days, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row. They can just keep going and going and going. But once they stop, because they're fixed, it's like literally trying to get a gigantic boulder moving again. It's really, really hard to start new things. Even though it's the new moon, it is in Taurus. So if we're in that mode where we kind of just want to get things going, start new projects, plant new seeds, whatever, great. But if we're not really in the mood for that and we're kind of like coming from a lazier space, I think it's going to be a bit difficult to want to get going. Now, we do have the eclipse aligned with Uranus too, which is kind of gives us a little bit more energy to work with, but I do think that it needs to be channeled in a certain way, or else we'll kind of just end up with like this electricity going everywhere and feeling really nervous and not really sure what to do. So bulls are sacred. They're, bulls are in every mythology across all cultures, all over the world. And that's because cows were really important, to ancient civilizations. In Ireland, cows were basically like money. Like they were just so prized. Usually war in ancient Ireland was cattle raids. So stealing people's cattle was like the ultimate act of war, which is why the Morrigan is associated with bulls. And there's also Isis from Egypt associated with bulls, Marduk from Sumeria associated with bulls, Shiva, Zeus, like the list just goes on. There are so many important deities that are connected with bulls, not just because they were important, but because of what they represent. Now, I have read some theories that there was a different type of bull in ancient civilizations that has since died out. Oh, not here. That has since died out, like a massive, some kind of different breed of bull that was just like a massive creature. So, and they were wild too. Like they couldn't really be tamed. There were these wild bulls out there. So there is some theories that that could be where like a lot of different like cave depictions and other mythologies come from, was like this other bull, which species has probably died out by now. It has died out. So, okay, let's talk about what this eclipse is associated with. So, bulls are sacred. So I want to talk a little bit about Cassiopeia and also Andromeda, who is Cassiopeia's daughter, and also the Cassiopeia Constellation. Why? Because there is a fixed star called Shadir. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Shadir, which this eclipse is very, very close to. It is a little bit wider. Most people use like a 2-degree orb with this fixed star in particular, but I just think it's important. I don't know. I just feel like it's important anyway, even though I think it might be like 3 or 4 degrees away. But it's still relevant. Okay, so let's talk about who Cassiopeia is. Can you see? Let me make this, my box here a little bit smaller. The mythologies are so important. Why do I keep going here? I'm sorry. Okay. So Cassiopeia, Queen Cassiopeia. So the story with her daughter Andromeda, it's an interesting story. There's a lot to unpack with that story. Basically, Cassiopeia is bound to this throne in the sky. So that's the constellation that you see here on the right-hand side of your screen. So Andromeda was Cassiopeia's daughter. Cassiopeia was very vain and I don't want to say stupid or anything, but she didn't really think before she talked. So she made the mistake of saying that her daughter, Andromeda, was more beautiful than the Nereids. Again, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. But basically, I'm looking at my notes here. I don't want to get it wrong. Okay. So she said that her daughter was more beautiful than the Nereids. And for some reason, this really upset Poseidon. That's kind of like his realm with the Nereids, and he did not like that. So basically, Andromeda's mother, Queen Cassiopeia, and her husband had to sacrifice Andromeda to the sea monster Cetus. So that's great. So she's literally sacrificing her own daughter, Andromeda, chained her to a rock next to the sea to just straight up sacrifice her to the sea monster Cetus to appease Poseidon. So that's great. Poor Andromeda. So after this happens, Cetus comes to claim his sacrifice, which is Andromeda, and Perseus comes out of nowhere to save the day, as he does. I don't know why he annoys me in mythology. So it's like a personal problem, I guess. So anyway, Andromeda is chained to this rock. Cetus, the sea monster, is coming to claim her, eat her, I don't know. Perseus sees how beautiful Andromeda is and just happens to come across her, I guess, and saves her and marries her. So, yeah. Yay, happy ending, whatever. But then Poseidon was like, no, Cassiopeia still needs to be punished for what she said. So Poseidon took Cassiopeia, put her in the sky on her throne, and chained her to her throne, so that half the year she would have to be upside down in her own throne, but she's chained to it. So that's like her torture chair. Greek mythology is something else. So she would revolve upside down half of the time. So in this depiction here, you don't really see her chained to it. She kind of looks like she's having a good time, I guess. She looks fine, but she has to revolve upside down half the year, so it literally is like a torture chair. Which reminds me of another story we talked about recently, about Vulcan and his mother. Who was his mother? It wasn't Hera, was it? So Vulcan's mother, who rejected him and threw him into the ocean, he built her a chair that ended up trapping her into it, and the more she struggled to get out, the more trapped she got in this chair. So there's something with that. I feel like that's related too, because I believe, I'm sorry, I think it might have been Cetus. No, it wasn't Cetus. It was a different sea nymph that had raised Vulcan, who's the god of volcanoes and blacksmithing. So I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that one. But there's definitely something with these torture chairs. It could have just been the times. I don't know. So that was all from GreekMythology.com. This is the Cassiopeia Constellation. This is such a beautiful picture. Now, this is really interesting because when you look at it, I always try just to kind of get the vibe on what this constellation is. And it just looks like a very sad eye, doesn't it? It gives me such a watery feeling, but it just looks like a very sad. It just feels sad to me. I don't know. I hope you understand what I'm saying, but it just seems like there is some heaviness associated with this constellation. And because this eclipse is aligned with this constellation, there's something going on here. A lot of the cards I pulled too are very emotional, I will say. They're not easy. There's nothing about this eclipse that to me feels easy at all. Okay, so the fixed star Shadir is somewhat close to the eclipse. According to astrologyking.com, it's the energy of Saturn and Venus, according to Ptolemy. It's a pale rose star. So I kind of saw this as this fixed star is punishment for vanity. So it's kind of like dark Venus in a way. Because think about Saturn. Saturn is restrictions, setbacks, boundaries, keeping things reeling them in and making them be within a certain range. While Venus, in this situation with this story, it's kind of being vain, being selfish, being gluttonous, just taking Venus too far. Now, what's interesting with this fixed star in astrology, because people who have it prevalent in their chart, again, it's either really good or really bad. It seems like if they can reel in that energy of Venus by utilizing that Saturn part of it too, things are great and they can be very successful. I think Zendaya is one person who has this in her chart. Now, someone who also has it in their chart, but it definitely took the negative turn, was Sid Vicious, who is very well known for being in the Sex Pistols, the band, and he killed his girlfriend, Sid Vicious. The name and everything. So he had this fixed star on his descendant. So yeah, so it really can go both ways, and kind of how I would sum this up to, what we sacrifice for selfish reasons, we will be sacrificed for. So to me, this star, this constellation is kind of like a warning. All things Venus, love and beauty and sex and pleasure, all of that stuff needs to be reeled in a bit by Saturn. And if you take those things too far, they kind of become like the devil card. And I kind of felt like a Lucifer thing happening with this as well. Capricorn is the devil card. Lucifer is Venus. The morning star, which is Venus, is Lucifer. So I thought that was all very interesting. And I did end up looking at the Lucifer, Lucifer being the light bringer, Lucifer asteroid. And during this eclipse, it's exactly trine Chiron, and it also happens to be in retrograde, which really like amps up that energy and like brings it internal also. It's also square Mars in Pisces, so there's a lot going on with Mars in Pisces. Mars is busy. We'll talk more about that too. So Andromeda was put in danger by her mother's vanity. She was betrayed by her mother when she sacrificed her to Poseidon. Perseus rescues her, but also marries her. So in the way that I see it, even though Perseus rescues her, as you can see in this picture here, I could not find the artist, but what a beautiful depiction. Obviously, that's Thetis, Perseus, and Andromeda. So even though he rescued her, he still married her, which not everybody sees that as a binding. It is a binding, though. So it doesn't have to be like a negative binding. But it really depends on how you see it, because when you marry someone, you commit to them, you are creating a contract. You're creating a binding contract. So it's like no matter what Andromeda did in this situation, which she just kind of was forced into all this stuff, like she didn't want any of this to happen. It was her mother's fault for making a stupid comment that was going to upset Poseidon. And then it was her mother's fault again for chaining her to this rock. And then Perseus saves her, but then marries her. So it feels like she's always bound to something. It's like Andromeda is bound to her mother's selfishness, and she's bound to her mother's heartlessness, and then she's bound to this man. So it's interesting. So to me, that kind of suggests that Venus and beauty and all the Venus things have a binding effect, which again makes me think of the Devil Tarot card, because in the traditional deck, the Rider-Waite deck, the people are bound to the devil, but they're doing it willingly. And I do think that Venus things can really bind us to the earth, obviously, in so many ways, which can be fine, but then if taken to excess, there can be like a lot of bad things that happen. So that's the kind of like energy I'm getting from this whole story. Poor Andromeda. So dark Venus energy. And then this is from a different live that I did, but we're going into this eclipse wormhole. Here's a cool depiction of what a wormhole actually is. So we're realigning ourselves with destiny. Eclipses are wild cards. Anything can happen. Rick Levine always said that. Probably still says that. Flashes of powerful realizations are possible during the eclipse. Quick downloads and integration of lessons, like really, really fast. Because we literally, instead of going the long way, it's like reality is folding in on itself, and we can just go through this wormhole and like learn all this stuff and download all these things really, really fast. So it's very otherworldly, and it can be very intense too. Now let's look at the astrology. So now that we're talking about the binding of Andromeda and Cassiopeia, let me just get out of that for a second and get a drink here. So the binding of Andromeda and this fixed star having the energy of Venus and Saturn, and Cassiopeia is a constellation just being a little bit binding in general. It can be very negative in some situations, but in other situations it's very good. I think it's interesting that Zendaya in Euphoria, the show that she is in, she plays like a drug addict, which I think is really interesting because this star is like such an important star in her chart. So the the binding of Andromeda and Cassiopeia is like the double card I wrote. It's kind of like addictions, obsessions, cravings, desires. So I looked up the Lucifer, since Lucifer is Venus, the morning star. Like I said, that asteroid is exactly trine Chiron right now, and it's also square Mars and Pisces. So you'll kind of see as we go through the astrology, but Mars and Pisces is trying to do something here, which normally Mars and Pisces is like a difficult placement, I guess. All placements can be difficult. But Pisces being very compassionate and otherworldly and ethereal and psychic and mystical, having Mars and Pisces is a strange placement. But Mars and Pisces is like seriously stressed for this eclipse for some reason. I haven't figured out why, but maybe as I talk about it, things will come together. And I also looked at Poseidon, which is a hypothetical planet in Uranian astrology. Poseidon is opposite the eclipse and opposite Uranus as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I use the Uranian planet sometimes, but okay. All right, so here is the chart. So let's talk about the different aspect patterns that we have. And so I've been dreaming about Mary Magdalene and Isis, and I had this really intricate dream. My dreams have been so powerful and vivid. Sometimes just weird, but when I dream, it tends to be like really extreme stuff because my Pluto is in my 12th house of dreams. So usually I dream about the end of the world as like a normal dream for me. But I had this dream about Mary Magdalene and how her teachings emanate the power and ritualistic fertility aspect of the Egyptian goddess Isis. So there's a lot of speculation that Mary Magdalene was actually a priestess. She was for sure a priestess, but she was a priestess of Isis. So I looked at the Isis asteroid also. I guess I could just show you the astro.com. Okay, so the asteroid Isis is like very, very closely conjunct Black Moon Lilith. I thought that was interesting. Black Moon Lilith is doing a lot this eclipse. So also if you look over here, Chiron, Kali, Inanna, and Ishtar are all conjunct. Wow, like there's just so much dark goddess stuff going on. So what else was there? Asteroid Lilith, which is here, is exactly quintile Venus and Jupiter. So yeah, I don't really know what to make of that, but also Dark Moon Lilith is perfectly square a 0 degrees Mercury in Gemini. So I don't know, there's something happening with the dark goddess here. That Gemini energy thrown into this mixture is really interesting because there's something so youthful and free about Gemini, and it's not that that doesn't go along with the dark goddess energy, because I think it actually fuels it and is necessary. I don't know. Okay, so we'll get back to that. Let's talk about the aspect patterns for this eclipse. So the main aspect patterns this is a clusterfuck right now, but there is a sextile triangle. So a sextile triangle, here is a trine between Pluto and Mercury, and they're both connected via a sextile to Venus and Jupiter. So yes, Venus and Jupiter, because they are both conjunct right now, very, very, very closely at the time of this eclipse. So sextile triangles, they definitely flow. The points are working together. Pluto, Mercury in Gemini, and Venus, Jupiter, and Pisces conjunction. That is some weird stuff happening. I really see this as like dark Plutonian horrible things, like just peeking through the veil and like coming out, like nightmares, like popping out and scaring us. Mercury in Gemini, I think, is a little bit of a saving grace right now, because that will definitely help us see things from all angles, gain some perspective. There's really no way to make sense of Venus and Jupiter and Pisces conjunct. You just have to kind of enjoy it. But with Pluto and Capricorn playing into this whole thing, now in retrograde, but barely moving at all, that horrible stuff, I think we might actually be able to analyze that data and like picture and see and visualize and imagine things that have happened in the past and logically use that fantastic Mercury and Gemini energy to make sense of it and to connect the dots and to connect things that we haven't normally connected or we haven't connected before and just put that to rest. That's how I feel. And like the Venus and Jupiter conjunction will also help us heal, help us tap into our spirituality and our sense of beauty and our desires in a very positive way. Jupiter can take things really far, but I do think that it's a weird aspect, but it definitely offers us a way to look at things intellectually that maybe we haven't before. So we also have this other triangle. Hygeia is opposing the sun and the moon, so the eclipse. And the point of Thales here is pushing out towards Mars. So the stress of this sacred geometry is pushing out towards Mars and Pisces. So Mars and Pisces is stressed. There's a lot going on with Mars and Pisces for this eclipse. Like I said, it's kind of a weird placement in general. There's always benefits. Okay, there's always benefits to every placement. But it's just kind of like a mismatched energy, I think. And then with Hygeia being like the serpent healing goddess, connected to medicine and hygiene, and connected to the eclipse, I see this as like possibly sudden healing, suddenly finding compassion for ourselves, forgiving ourselves, maybe forgiving others that is on our journey right now. Just really seeing things and meshing things and combining things in a new way. Virgo, which is the opposite of Pisces, is the alchemist. So I see Pisces as like the spiritual alchemist. We're just bringing like wholeness and like oneness to things that we don't normally bring that energy to. And it's just making us see more whole. I'm thinking of like soul retrieval for some reason. And yes, okay. So let's talk about the aspects. Oh my gosh, there is really interesting stuff happening here. So Venus is conjunct Jupiter and Pisces. I already talked about that a bit. I'll read my little descriptions that I wrote as I was looking at the astrology. So Venus conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. It's just, to me, it's spiritual growth, but it's also, to me, again, that dangerous energy with Venus. So there's definitely this danger of like taking things too far, realizing where in our lives we have been in excess, especially with Venus, Taurus things, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. So money is a big one. And it can be kind of like gluttony too, maybe like eating too much, spending too much money, maybe getting into like bouts of laziness, stuff like that. It's going to be apparent, I think, if we want to work on those things, but we can also see the beauty in all things and maybe use that excess to fuel new creative projects and ideas. Okay, so the sun and the moon, the eclipse is septile Black Moon Lilith. So I don't know why that is. Oh yeah, there's something drawn in here, but the eclipse is septile, very, very closely Black Moon Lilith. This is really, really powerful. This is Lilith magic. This is unseen forces, to me. Unseen forces giving us our power back, giving power back to the people. I do feel that there are spiritual forces that are creating balance again in situations where people's power was taken away or people were just abused or oppressed somehow. I feel like there's something like spirits or like something is helping to create balance back in nature again. I do feel like the power is being given back to the people who or the earth or whatever that hasn't had those things in a while. The sun and the moon are square white moon Selena. Oh, I don't have white moon Selena. Oh, no, I do right here. It's kind of hard to see. So the eclipse is square white moon Selena. It might be hard to see the purpose of it all and the goodness right now, but we have to be in this like dark wisdom serpentine space right now. So it might be kind of hard to see the purpose of everything that's happening. It might just feel like pain. that's okay. It will pass, and it definitely does serve a purpose. We just might not be able to see it right now. Maybe not until the next eclipse, which will be on the 15th, I believe, of May. So Chiron is sextile Vesta. Very strong here. So the thicker the line, the closer the aspect is. Very closely sextile Vesta. So for this, I wrote, the fiery feminine flame devours and tarnishes those painful scars that need to be broken down. There was like this really strong message coming in of like, these scars that we have that maybe didn't heal right, or maybe still irritating us, they're hardened, but for some reason we got to go back in there and break that tissue down because it's affecting other things that we might not realize. That's the kind of message I was getting. So Venus and Jupiter are also sextile Sedna, which Sedna is sitting pretty close to Algol right now. Yeah, I got this like random download, this sentence, so I'll just read it to you. These weren't my words, it just like came in like this. Break, daughter of the dark sea, float down and begin to create from your death. So that came in from what I'm assuming is Sedna. The eclipse is bisextile Pluto, and Black Moon Lilith is trisextile Pluto. Need I say more? Also, the eclipse is sextile Mars in Pisces. So again, there's something happening with the Mars in Pisces. Oh no, we didn't talk about that. We talked about the triangle, but this specific aspect is really, really, really close. So really strong. There's so much emphasis on the Mars in Pisces. And for some reason, it just kind of came to me that like there is a spiritual battle taking place right now. There just is. It might not even have anything to do with us, but we're definitely feeling the effects of that. Because it's easy for us to think, like, as humans, like, this whole world is all about us. It's not. we just happen to be here for a little while. We come here, we have a short life to live, and then we leave, and then, you know, maybe come back 800 times if we want to. In my opinion. I don't have any proof of that. But I do think that there are things happening here on Earth right now that we don't know about. We're seeing some of it because like that stuff all like trickles into each other. But I do think that there are things happening in the spirit realms that really have nothing to do with us, but we're still feeling it. We must hold the energy strong and fear nothing. This is how we activate and raise up the frequencies of the grid and disallow lower vibrational energies, entities, whatever, to come through. That's just what I wrote. All right. Okay. So that is all the astrology that I have. We will look at some tarot cards and wrap things up. So yeah, it's really intense. And then when I pulled these cards, I was like, okay, it's really intense. There's a lot happening right now. There are things that have nothing to do with us. There are things that have everything to do with us. It's going to be difficult. Just imagine, like, what am I thinking of? There is stories about certain fighters who would purposely break the cartilage down in their shins. Like, purposely break it down, and then it would fix itself, it would heal and harden, break it down, really, really painful. But over time, like, their shins would become so hardened with like that healed scar tissue that they could kick anything and it wouldn't hurt them at all. But that process was like so incredibly painful. That's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm feeling in the air right now, in the energy. That breaking down process, it's not just once. We don't have just one dark night of the soul. We have it over and over again. And really, the dark night of the soul, that's like part of the human experience, I think. I don't think it's just the one time or the however many times. We keep coming back to that because it's actually a part of our existence, especially because we tend to ignore the darkness a lot. Like, then it really becomes part of our reality all the time. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that there's some learning and some growth that we can do in the darkness. So that's what I'm feeling. Like, that scar tissue is being broken down. Have you ever like gotten a really bad knot and you massaged it out or rolled out your IT band or something? And that hurts when you have knots in your ligaments, your IT bands. That hurts. And rolling that out, I know when I roll mine out, I cry sometimes because it hurts, but that's that's how you heal, and that's how you make yourself mobile again, is taking care of yourself. So there's like pain leading to strength and leading to more like movement in this earth realm. All right, so let's look at the cards, and I will let y'all go. Okay, so these are the cards that I pulled for this full moon. I mean, this new moon. All right, so hopefully you can see that okay. So I didn't really interpret this too much. I just kind of glanced at it and I was like, whoa, all right. I've been focusing so much on the pain and the darkness right now, and I wasn't sure why, but like it actually makes sense now. Let me move this microphone closer. So the bottom card was the Hanged Man. So to me, the Hanged Man is like an overarching theme of this whole reading. So the Hanged Man is, to me, one of the most interesting cards because he's hanged upside down on this cross, but it almost looks like he put himself there because he's only tied up by one foot. And with the yellow glow, I don't know if you can see that, but the yellow glow around his head, it's like he's reaching enlightenment, which makes me think of like the Buddha sitting under a tree and reaching enlightenment. So there's something about sitting still and like really waiting right now and not pushing forward too hard, not trying to do too much, not trying to force things to happen right now, because you're going to learn what you need to learn and do what you need to do by literally sitting still and like trusting the process for a second and just letting things happen. That's like the overarching theme. Now, looking at the Rider-Waite cards, we have the Nine of Swords in the past with the Three of Wands reversed, the Knight of Cups reversed, the Ace of Wands reversed in the future, and the Ten of Swords in the future. So let's just talk about the Nine of Swords and the Ten of Swords. These cards, they look really depressing. They definitely can be. What is depression? A lot of people have theories about what that is. Depression is, in my opinion, it's like our own intelligence turning against us, as well as anxiety. These two cards represent swords, which is the air element. So Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. So when we have too much swords, we have too much intelligence, we're thinking too much, we're too much in our head, oftentimes it turns into mental illness because like we're just stuck in there. And there's a lot of like yoga teachings that the brain left to its own devices, if we don't like practice meditation and we don't practice trying to, you can't really control the brain, but just focusing on being in the present. If you don't practice that, the mind is going to go to a dysfunctional, ill place. It just does. I'm thinking of one of Eckhart Tolle's books, A New Earth. He was talking about this woman who was walking around just muttering to herself, talking to herself, like literally having all these conversations, saying all these like random things. People are staring at this lady like, what is wrong with this person? But in the book, he writes about how that is how all of our minds are. Like literally having all these conversations, talking to ourselves, it just never stops. She was just vocalizing it. I love that story, and it's so true. So I'm definitely feeling like meditation is important right now, slowing the heck down, because at this point it's just overkill. Like continuing to push forward, it's not going to fix the imbalances that have happened. It's just not. It's not going to fix it. You got to slow down. You got to trust that what needs to happen will happen, and what is meant for you will come. This is not the time to push forward for this eclipse, and even afterwards, like we really got to like stop for a second. The Ten of Swords, it's not like a... That is interesting that I didn't even mean to do this. I just happened to have this rock on my table here, and I put the rock right above the Ten of Swords. Stop! Like, we gotta stop. We gotta really tap into that, like, fixed earth Taurus energy of just, like, ground down. It's just too much. It's just too much. There's too much fire. There's too much passion. You know, your emotions are spilled out everywhere. Like, it's not going to get better until we stop, until we hanged man it. Like, we literally just force ourselves to stop and just, like, let the world happen around you for a second if you can. sit under that tree until you understand why you had to sit under that tree. You know what I mean? Oh my God, I actually forgot that. So this is my Earth Chakra bowl. I meant to play it at the beginning and then I totally forgot. So this is a really great bowl for grounding. It is tuned to the frequency of the root chakra, and it is made of like ground up quartz crystals, which is super cool, in my opinion. Yeah, I love this bowl. I love to feel grounded because I need it. I need it more than anything because I'm not naturally grounded. I gotta constantly ground myself. We'll play that at the end. Yes, so if you can, just based on this reading, I would not push forward. I would sit where you are. It's just overkill, and if you keep pushing forward and not resting, not waiting to see what the heck this is all about, it's not going to get better. It's just not, like, going in this direction. I just see it as like going straight into the ground. Like, it's just not a good place to be. We need to like stop where we are, root, be present. And Taurus is very mystical and spiritual too, so it's like very divinely aligned, I think. Let's talk about the Archetypes cards, which is from the Archetypes deck by the Wild Unknown. The animal, the warrior. The animal and the warrior. That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like we need to connect to Earth Chakra things, so that wildness that makes us truly an animal. We gotta, I think, tap into like that primal part of ourselves that, like, we have to like put our hands and our feet in the earth and get dirty and be in the sunlight. It's always cloudy here by Chicago, but get outside. Just get outside, touch the plants, like work with your hands and like feel the earth. Like, do that. Like, rub the dirt all over your face, whatever you want to do. Like, feel the earth. Like tap into your wildness, tap into your primal instincts, and remember that we are animals, like in this human form. We tend to forget that. The next card that I had pulled, I believe, was the Tear, and then Anima Mundi. Anima Mundi is, like, to me, a wild card, so it's really perfect for this eclipse. Like, anything can happen. It's wild. It's all over the place. It's unpredictable. The Tear, I just saw a cat run away. The Tear, whenever I pull this card, I always end up crying about something. We got to release some big stuff. Healing those scars, just because they scarred over doesn't mean it's healed, you know? And scars themselves can be actually really damaging if they didn't heal right. Some of that stuff I feel like is going to get torn open again with this eclipse, and we're going to have to re-heal it and heal it the right way, you know, if we choose. Because if it heals the wrong way again, we're going to have some serious issues to deal with later. And then finally, the Vessel. The Vessel with what looks like a little moon, too. This is really interesting. I was looking at this one Instagram, Ravens Keep Forge. He's a priest of the Morrigan, and he makes this like really cool hand-forged stuff. And that kind of looks like one of the bowls that he made of copper. And I think this is interesting, too, in the moonlight. Like, we really need that cleansing. We really need that cleansing, I think, with this new moon. Take a bath, you know, take a salt bath or something. Put out put out your crystals, or like make your moon water or something like that. That's kind of how I'm feeling about that. You know, this is our sacred container, and we only get one. We only have one physical body. We got to take care of it. Because if we don't take care of this, everything else is going to get fucked up. Now, I'm just saying this from my own experience. When I don't take care of myself, everything I do ends up being messed up. Like, no matter what it is, it just doesn't work. So it's really time to, like, surrender to the flow. And honestly, with the Hanged Man, it's like you have to. You don't even have a choice at this point, because everything you do is just going to end up so chaotic. You really got to take care of you and your soul. Take that salt bath for the love of the gods. Okay. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful new moon solar eclipse. Like I said, it's a partial eclipse, so probably won't be able to see it unless you live in certain parts under the equator. So yes. Okay, hope you guys have a great new moon. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on